Leviticus chapter 10, verses 1 through 10. It says, Now Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his censer and put fire on it, and put incense on it, and offered strange fire before the Lord, which he did not command them to do. Then a fire came out from the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. Then Moses said to Aaron, This is what the Lord spake, saying, I will be sanctified by those who come near me, and before all the people I will be glorified. And Aaron held his peace. Moses called Mishael and Elzaphan, the sons of Uzziel, the uncle of Aaron, and said to them, Come near, and carry your brothers from before the sanctuary out of the camp. So they went near and carried them in their tunics out of the camp, as Moses had said. Moses said to Aaron and to Eleazar and Ithamar his sons, Do not let your hair be loosely disheveled, nor rend your clothes, lest you die, and lest wrath come upon all the people. Instead, let your brothers, the whole house of Israel, mourn the burning which the Lord has caused. Ye shall not go out from the entrance of the tent of meeting, lest ye die, for the anointing oil of the Lord is upon you. And they did according to the word of Moses. The Lord spoke to Aaron, saying, Do not drink wine, nor strong drink, you or your sons with you, when you go into the tent of meeting, lest you die. It shall be a perpetual statute throughout your generations, so that you may differentiate between what is holy and common, and between what is unclean and clean. We live in a society today that has forgotten God. We live in a society today that has tried to kick God out of everything. We live in a society today where our educational system, our media, our politics, basically anything that you can name has kicked God out of the picture. To be honest, I'm surprised that our currency still has the words "In God We Trust" inscribed on it. And I believe it's only a matter of time that will also be taken away. The world today has done everything in its power to rid itself of the concept of God. Our passage today here in Leviticus chapter 10 is a reminder to us all that God is holy, that God is righteous, that God cannot be approached on our terms. He must be approached on His terms. He cannot be approached flippantly. He cannot be approached by any method that man devises. He must be approached on His terms in the way that He has devised, and woe be to any man who attempts to approach Him in any other way. Now, we do not know exactly what Nadab and Abihu did. All we know is that they approached God with strange fire. Now, what is strange fire? The Hebrew word for strange basically means foreign, or that which has not been consecrated to God. The same word is translated many times stranger, or one who was outside the household of God. It is also used to describe rebellious Israel, where it's translated, they are gone away backward. I believe we can assume that the fire that Nadab and Abihu offered to God was not taken off the altar as God had designated. They had gotten it from some other source. God had given specific instructions as to all the altars and tools that were to be used in the temple, including the materials and also the exact methods of how all of the duties of the temple were to be conducted. So rather than following the instructions God had laid out, Nadab and Abihu took it upon themselves to do things their own way, approach God in their own way, use the methods they saw fit, and it cost them their lives. Now, it may seem a bit harsh that just because they didn't offer the coals taken off the altar, that God killed them. But God made an example of them for one specific purpose, and that purpose is given in verse 10, where he told Moses, he says, so that you may differentiate between what is holy and common, and between what is unclean and clean. We must never forget that first and foremost, God is holy. God is righteous. Even with much of Christianity in our day and age, we have forgotten that God is a holy God. What we see today in many churches and on television is that God is just our big buddy, or God is some kind of spiritual Santa Claus who wants us all to be rich. Most of these large super churches today are built totally on the flesh. They've become large, and these super churches with thousands of members, because they appeal to man's flesh, to man's greed, to man's selfishness. This word of faith movement, the name it and claim it movement, speaking something into existence. We can all manifest things. We can create our own reality. All of that is directly from Satan himself. Did not the devil try to tempt Jesus with the same methods? In Matthew chapter 4, verses 8 and 9, it says, again, the devil took him up on a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their grandeur, and said to him, all these things I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. And of course, we know that Jesus told him to get lost, that only God was the only one to be worshipped, to be served. Here's the thing. People love to be religious. People love to go through the motions and experience things that make them feel good. And that's the kind of religion we have today. That's why these mega churches can get such big crowds, because they make people feel. They make them feel good. They give them an emotional high. They appeal to the emotions, to the flesh, to man's greed. And one of the main reasons that religion such as that has run amok in our day and age is that we have forgotten that God is holy. And rather than coming before God in the manner which God has ordained, they are offering God a strange fire. Now, what practical applications can we learn from this passage in Leviticus chapter 10? I think there are several. First of all, as I've already stated, we must first understand that God is a holy God. I can't state the importance of that enough. We need to understand that God is a holy God. That means, as God's people, if you're a Christian or claim to be a Christian, we are also to be holy. If we want to have a relationship with God and be in communion with God, we must also be holy. Psalm chapter 24, verses 3 through 5 says, who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Or who shall stand in his holy place? He that has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. He shall receive the blessing from the Lord, and righteousness from the God of his salvation. In Romans chapter 12, verse 1, Paul tells us, I urge you therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4 says, just as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world to be holy and blameless before him. 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 15 and 16 says, but as he who has called you is holy, so be holy in all your conduct, because it is written, be holy, for I am holy. You see, as children of God, we are to be like our Father. We are to be holy. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 11 says, because we are not of this world, we are to know what sort of people ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness. You see, even though we may be Christians, even though we may be children of God, we must never, ever forget that God will not tolerate sin and disobedience. Isaiah chapter 59 verse 2 says, "But your iniquities have separated between you and your God, and your sins have hid his face from you, that he will not hear." Now, if we are saved, while sin will not separate us from the love of God, it will not make us no longer be children of God. It will hinder our fellowship with God, our communion with God, and our overall happiness concerning our Christian life. You see, God must be approached according to his terms. He must be approached as a holy God, and he expects a holy people. And if we come to him in prayer, we want to make sure God hears us. That he's not hearing our prayers because of our disobedience. We want to make sure and be obedient, holy children of God. Secondly, we must approach God according to the method that he has laid out in his word. In Matthew chapter 7, Jesus made it very clear. He said, "Enter at the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who are going through it. Because small is the gate and narrow is the way which leads to life, and few there are who find it." Then later in the same chapter, in Matthew chapter 7, he says this. He says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonderful works in your name?' But then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice evil.'" And that's a pretty amazing passage there. A very telling passage. There are many who say they come in the name of Christ. But in reality, they are, as Jesus said himself, they are wolves in sheep's clothing. They are false prophets appearing as prophets of God. They are servants of Satan appearing as angels of light, as the Bible says. They claim to be doing the work of God, when in reality they are deceivers, false prophets, demons in disguise. They claim to be feeding the flock, when in reality they are simply feeding their own pockets and their own wallets. Their whole ministries are fake, nothing but strange fire. The majority of religious people have in reality devised their own method of reaching heaven. They believe they deserve heaven because they've lived a good life. They think they deserve heaven because they belong to a particular church. They think they deserve heaven because they were baptized into a particular church. They think they deserve heaven because, I haven't killed anybody or done anything as far as they think or believe is really bad. But do you realize that in God's eyes that you are a murderer? I don't care who you are. Do you realize in God's eyes that you are a murderer? Do you realize in God's eyes you have broken every law of God that he ever gave? Oh, no, I've never done that. I've never killed it. Oh, wait a minute. James says in chapter 2, verses 10 and 11, he says, "For whoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend in one point is guilty of breaking the whole law. For he who said, 'Do not commit adultery,' also said, 'Do not kill.' Now if you do not commit adultery, yet you kill, you have become a lawbreaker." See, this is very important to understand. You need to understand that God views his law as a whole. Now, unlike our laws, God's law is not broken down into different parts. You see, you may get a ticket for speeding. You've broken the law, but you're not guilty of murder. You may have shoplifted, but you're not guilty of murder. But God's law isn't like that. God views his law as a whole. What that means is James says that to offend in one point is to break the entire law. So if you've never killed anybody in a real sense, but you've lied, God sees you being guilty of adultery, guilty of murder, guilty of robbery, because the law is not in different parts. The law is a whole. And so James says if you offend in one point, you're guilty of it all. You are condemned by the entire law. That means there is no way that living a good life or trying to keep the commandments in order to reach heaven is ever possible, because all of us, there is not a person on this earth. Jesus was the only one who was ever sinless. Every other person living on this earth is guilty of breaking God's entire law. So, to even attempt to come to God or believing you deserve heaven because you've lived a good life is offering to God strange fire. You must come to a holy, righteous God in the manner He has clearly designated in the Bible, and that is through faith in the shed blood of Christ on the cross. Realizing and believing that there is nothing in you, no good you could ever do in order to deserve heaven or earn heaven. You have to realize that you are helpless to earn your own salvation. Jesus has already paid the price for you, has already taken your punishment, and you simply take any trust off of yourself, completely off of yourself, and place it in the precious blood of Christ for your salvation. Back in the book of Exodus, when God was going through the land of Egypt and all of the firstborn of every household was going to die, God told His people to take the blood of a lamb and apply it to the doorpost of each household so they could avoid judgment. And He told them this. In Exodus chapter 12, verse 13, He says, "The blood shall be to you for a sign on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt." Any household that did not have the blood on the doorposts were affected by the plague, and the firstborn of every household died. And let me tell you this, the blood is the only thing that will keep you from judgment. God said, when I see the blood, I will pass over you. Oh, but Lord, I think I've lived a pretty good life. Oh, but where's the blood? But Lord, I tithe regularly and even went on a mission spreading your word. But where's the blood? But Lord, I went to church every Sunday morning and every Sunday night, and even went to prayer meeting and Bible study on Wednesdays. But where's the blood? The only way you have to approach God and be accepted is through the blood of Christ. To approach God any other way is to approach Him with strange fire. Now, the third thing that we can get from this passage is that to approach God with strange fire is to face His judgment. It appears that Nadab and Abihu decided to tip a few before they went to take the censers before God, because God says, don't drink alcohol before you go into the temple. This will be a statute throughout your generations. And so it's believed by most people, most commentators, most Bible scholars, believe that Nadab and Abihu were drunk when they went in there and performed this thing, and it cost them their lives. You see, they didn't take God seriously. They didn't look at their duties as being a holy service to God. They came before God with coals and ashes, apparently not taken from the altar as God had designated. They were flippant. They were careless. And, as I said earlier, it cost them their lives. Also, as I said earlier, God has a very specific, set way to approach Him. The gate is narrow. Jesus said there would be few who would find it. Now, why is that? Why is it that there's so few that find it? I think a lot of it simply is that people don't want to go through the gate. They want to devise their own method or look for some other means of getting around the gate. For some reason, people just don't want the simplicity of what God says, or the simplicity of God's salvation. It is because salvation is simple. But both the Bible and Jesus himself were very clear as to that gate. The gate is very narrow, and it is the only entrance into heaven. In John chapter 10, verse 9, Jesus said, "I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved." Later in chapter 14, verse 6 of the Gospel of John, he said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." You see, you can't come to God based on your own merit. You can't come to God with some method that you've concocted in your mind. You can't come to God thinking you're going to heaven because you're a part of any specific church. To even attempt to do so is coming to God with strange fire. And to do so is to face the judgment of God. You see, if you think about it, salvation is very simple. The Christian life is very simple. Now, it's not always easy to obey. It's not always easy to keep ourselves in line. But the method itself is very simple. It's all Christ. Getting to heaven, becoming a Christian, is through Christ and through his shed blood. He is the gate. The only way you'll ever make it to heaven, if you put any faith in yourself, is your hope for heaven. You will not make it there. The only chance you have of going to heaven is to realizing you have no merit, you have no goodness, you are nothing but a sinner. All of us are sinners. We inherited Adam's sinful nature. We are condemned. We are corrupt. The Bible says there's no one who is good. There is none righteous. You first have to realize that before you have any chance of heaven. You have to realize that you can't make it on your own, that you can't do anything to earn it, that it is all of grace. It is all a free gift that God freely gives us, and all you have to do is place your trust in Christ and his finished work, realizing and believing that he already took your punishment, and God promises that he will save you. Don't offer God strange fire. And if you're already a Christian, again, it's very simple. God simply wants us to be obedient. The instruction manual, it's all there. That is why it's so important that we're in God's Word, because that is our instruction manual. That does instruct us how to be holy, how to be obedient, how to be pleasing to God. Let me just encourage everyone today. Do things God's way. Believe God. Follow him. Follow his instruction. Follow his instruction manual. Don't offer to God any form of strange fire.